Welcome back to the Veteran Teacher Files. I'm your host, the Dragon Lady. And if you're new here, welcome. Pull up a chair. You're amongst friends. And if you've been rocking with me for a while, you already know how we do. We keep it real, we keep it honest, and we say things that nobody else is willing to say out loud, but that everybody's thinking. Today's episode, we're getting into it. We are talking about data-driven decisions and what happens when the person driving doesn't actually know the road or have their glasses on. We're talking about big ideas that sound amazing on paper, but fall completely apart when someone who's never been in the room gets to be in charge of rolling them out. And I'm going to tell you a story, a real one, that I've lived. And by the end of it, I think you're going to understand exactly why I titled this episode what I did. Let's get into it. Okay, so let me ask you something. Have you ever heard the phrase 90 minutes of uninterrupted literacy? A 90-minute uninterrupted literacy block. Have you ever heard that and felt something like a little spark of hope? Like a yes, finally, someone gets it. Yeah, me too. And have you ever heard the phrase data-driven decisions and thought, okay, cool, we're moving in the right direction. We're going to look at what the kids actually need to make choices based on that. That sounds like progress. Here's the thing though. Both of those phrases, 90 minutes of uninterrupted literacy and data-driven decisions, they sound incredible. In theory, on paper, on a PowerPoint slide, at a district professional development meeting that you were not asked to attend. But those words, they mean something completely different depending on whether you have actually been in the room, whether you have actually stood in front of the kids, whether you have actually looked at a struggling reader in the eye and known exactly what that child needs and why. Because if you haven't, those words are just words. And words without understanding doesn't help kids. They just really make long staff meetings. And that, my friend, is what today's episode is about. So let me tell you what I built. Let me give it a little context, because this isn't just a rant, although there will be some of that. This is a story. And for the story to make sense, you need to know what I was working with. I was asked to help with an after-school intervention program. And when I came in, there was a skeleton, like the bare bones of something that could be good, but wasn't quite there yet. And I got to work. I put some real meat on the thing, some fat too. I gave it some life. We're talking 103 kids, 14 teachers, and a real structured approach to figuring out exactly what each of those kids needed. We were doing beginning phonics skills assessments, BPSTs. We knew where every single child was. We knew what they needed to move forward. We had a plan, we had data, and we were doing the work. Any one of those 103 kids, you give me the name, I could tell you exactly where their gap was. I knew what I was doing. The teachers knew what they were doing. And the kids were getting what they needed. That's the foundation. Keep that in mind, because what comes next is going to make you want to flip a table, or at least dramatically close your laptop. So here's where the story turns. At the end of all this work, the assessments, the planning, the showing up every day for those kids, we were told the data wasn't there. The data wasn't there. Now let me be very clear. The data was there. We had it. We built it. We used it. I knew what 103 kids needed because of that data. My 14 teachers knew what their students needed because of the data. The data existed. It was real. It was good. But the person who said it wasn't there, that person was in charge. And here's the part that really gets me. This person, lovely, I'm sure means well, but this person has a background in one subject, one grade band. And anytime we would get into the work, anytime we would go deep into what early learners need, what literacy development actually looks like in TK through 5th grade, she would remind us. She would say, well, that's not really my subject. I'm a such and such from middle school. And look, I hear you. I do. We all come from somewhere. We all have our lane. But here's the problem. You are now the administrator overseeing TK through 5th grade. You don't get to keep using your old lane as a shield. At some point, the kids in front of you have to matter more than the subject behind you. Every single time she said that, that's not my subject, I felt like a door closing, like an excuse, like a quiet way of saying, I don't fully have to be accountable for this work because it's not my area. And that is a microaggression to every teacher in that building who is in their area, who is doing the work, who is showing up every day knowing exactly what their kids know. It's a slow drip and it adds up. Okay, so fast forward. The school year's wrapping up, a new school year is coming, and this administrator comes in with a big idea. 90 minutes uninterrupted for literacy. And I want to be really clear. That idea on its own is fantastic. A great idea, actually. 90 minutes of protected literacy time is exactly what early elementary kids need. No interruptions, no fragmented instruction. That's the dream. And I looked around the room and I could see it on the faces of the teachers who knew. The veteran teachers especially. That little nod, that, yeah. Okay, yeah. If we do this right. But then she started explaining what it would look like. And that's where it started to fall apart. She said, during those 90 minutes, there would be no push-in and no push-out support. No push-in or push-out support. So the kids who actually need the intervention the most, the kids who have a specialist and support staff specifically assigned to them, those kids lose that support during the most important instructional block of the day. The block that was supposed to be created for intervention. And then she explained the schedule. The 90-minute blocks were staggered across classrooms, across grade levels, so no platooning, meaning teachers can't share students for targeted small group instruction. No flexible regrouping. No co-teaching. Just each teacher in their room with their kids for 90 minutes. And I sat there. This is a middle school schedule. This is what happens when someone who came up through middle school, where periods and bells and individual classrooms make complete sense, tries to apply that same logic to kindergarten through 5th grade. It doesn't transfer. It just doesn't. Because early elementary literacy isn't about keeping kids contained. It's more about flexibility. It's about meeting kids where they are. It's about having the ability to move kids between groups based on the data and what it's showing that they need. But instead, we got a staggered bell schedule with no support staff. Sorry, we have our clerks, and no collaboration. And then they call the staff meeting to roll this out. A 3-hour staff meeting to roll out a 90-minute block. We didn't intend for it to be a 3-hour meeting, But when things get rolled out poorly, it becomes 3 hours of nothing being resolved, of admin having one vision, of teachers having another, teachers quietly knowing what this should actually look like in practice, and new teachers, I'm sure, not knowing what to even ask. And everyone walking out of that meeting probably more confused than when they walked in. 90 minutes of uninterrupted instruction for kids, introduced through a 3-hour interrupted mess for teachers. The irony isn't lost on me. And this is what breaks my heart a little bit, because those kids are real. Those 103 kids from the after-school program, they're real. The kids walking into those classrooms in September, they're real. I know them. And they're going to show up, ready or not. And whatever was left unresolved in that 3-hour meeting is going to land on those very real kids. Admin is going to walk in with one vision of what those 90 minutes is supposed to look like, and teachers are going to be operating from a completely different understanding. Veteran teachers are going to try to make it work the way they know it should work. New teachers are going to follow the directions they were given, even if the directions don't quite make sense yet. And the kids in the middle of all that, they're just going to be kids, trying to learn to read, trying to get what they need, and depending entirely on whether the adults around them can get on the same page. I'm stepping away from my role as coordinator, and I genuinely hope they find someone who knows this work, someone who can fill that gap, someone who can take that 90-minute block and actually make it what it's supposed to be. But if they don't, the work is going to land on the administrator, who has already told us repeatedly that this isn't her subject. And I don't know if she has what it takes to transfer these skills to teachers in a way that actually sticks, in a way that actually helps kids. And that keeps me up at night, because I care about those kids. I built something for those kids, and I don't know what's going to happen to it. Here's what I want to leave you with. Data-driven decisions are only as good as the people interpreting the data. A 90-minute literacy block is only as powerful as the people who understand what it's supposed to hold. Good ideas don't fail kids. People who don't understand those ideas and won't admit it, those are the people failing the kids. And I think about that administrator. I think she means well. I really do. But meaning well is not the same as knowing the work. And when you're in charge of something this important, the literacy development of hundreds of young children, meaning well isn't enough. We need someone who could look at our phonics assessments and say, yes, I see what this data is telling us, and here's how we're supposed to respond. Instead, we got someone who looks at the data and talks to us about percentile growth. We need someone who could take the concept of a 90-minute literacy block and build it into what makes sense for early elementary learners. Instead, we got a middle school bell schedule and a 3-hour meeting. And teachers, we don't need a schedule. We didn't need someone to map out every minute and stagger every block and tell us what we can and can't do during instructional time. We need someone who trusts us to hand us the time and the resources and the support and then get out the way. We're professionals. We know our kids. We know the data. We know what those 90 minutes need to look like. Just tell us what time lunch is. Okay, friend, that's what I got for you today. Because it's real, it's recent, and I'm still sitting with it. But before I let you go, I want to ask you something, and I really genuinely want to hear from you on this one. Have you ever been in a room with someone who was making decisions about your classroom and your kids, your data, and you just knew they fully didn't understand what they were looking at. Maybe they questioned your work and you knew your work was solid. Maybe they rolled out a policy that sounded good but made no sense in practice. Maybe they reminded you one too many times that this wasn't their subject. What did that feel like? What did that do for you? Drop it in the comments. And listen, if this episode resonated with you, if you found yourself nodding along and saying, oh, that's my school, that's my admin, please follow, like, and subscribe. It helps more teachers find the show. It helps build our community. And honestly, that's the whole point. We are out here making sure teachers don't feel alone in this. Share it with a colleague, share it with a veteran teacher in your building who's been saying this stuff for years, but nobody's listening. And let them know somebody said it out loud. I'm the Dragon Lady, and this has been another episode of the Veteran Teacher Files.